It might seem borderline blasphemous to say this, given how much of a Schwarzenegger fan I am, but I like this more than his movie. I did not watch any trailers for The Running Man, but once I heard that Edgar Wright was working on it, I was interested. And then I started to wonder, how closely was this going to be adapted from the book? And you guys, it's a very close adaptation of the book. I read The Running Man years ago after I saw the 1987 movie. I remember being a little underwhelmed by the film, wasn't hugely wowed by it. It's never been one of my favorite of Arnold's films. And then I read the book and I was surprised at how different the movie was from the book. There's almost no similarities at all except for the name of the characters and just the basic setup of him being put in this game. That's about it. But this movie is very true to the original story. There are some things that are different. It's pretty minor, some of the stuff that's different, but the ending, they do change the ending quite a lot. When the ending started to happen, or the final act that was leading up to the ending, I thought, oh, are they actually going to go there? And they made it look like they were, but then they didn't really. So without telling you too many spoilers, especially if you haven't read the book, I don't want to give you specifics on that. Just, go in just to watch it. If you've never read the book, you're probably going to be comparing it to the movie, which a lot of people will do that. But I remember more details about the movie than the book. I had to refresh my memory on what specifically was in the actual novel, and that's how I know to tell you guys that it's very closely adapted. The basic premise is it actually takes place in 2025. In the book it does. I don't remember if they indicated that in the movie, but it's in the future, very dystopian sort of society, very clear and sharp delineation between the rich and the poor, and the rich have kind of sequestered themselves off from the rest of society, and there's this series of games or televised games that people will participate in to win some money. So you got a bunch of desperate people participating in these games, and the big game is the Running Man. That's the one with the most money at stake because lives are at stake. So Ben Richards, he and his wife both are scraping by. Their daughter is sick, and so he needs to make some money. He's been blacklisted from work with different companies because of insubordination, which basically the way they portray it is he's trying to stand up for his men. He's bucking the system because the system is messed up and all of that. So because he's just this little guy and doesn't have any power, he's kind of, steamrolled. So he decides he's going to try to enroll in one of these games, not the Running Man, but it ends up, of course, that he is brought into the Running Man. There was a lot of stuff that I enjoyed about this. It's not going to make my favorite of the year, but I also wasn't underwhelmed by it like I was with a previous Arnold-related film that came out this year, Predator Badlands. There were some cool Easter eggs that I wrote down that I wanted to mention. One was the currency had Arnold's on it. What, is he president in this alternate reality? The second one was, I'm pretty sure I spotted on a road sign the word dairy. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. There's some very clear messaging in this film, and honestly, it feels a bit heavy-handed. If you couldn't discern just by what you were shown on screen, they made sure to tell you many, many times, or lay it very clear in front of you how bad the rich were and how victimized the poor were, and the corporations were bad and they controlled government and all of that stuff. It felt very heavy-handed in its execution, hitting the audience over the head with it many times. And while there were certainly elements of truth to what was going on in the story, and I appreciated some of the commentary about the media and how the media can pit people against each other, which is exactly what they're doing now. And also, things about how if you want to really find out the truth about things, just turn off your TV, stop watching that nonsense. And there's a comment in here also that Ben Richards makes to someone. He said that the media has convinced viewers, like this particular person he's talking to, that they're better than the people that are being othered. And we saw a lot of othering going on during the COVID crap. I remember that very distinctly. If you did not bow down and take a vaccination that was being forced on you, some people wished you would die and said you deserve to die. I appreciated that sort of messaging that was in here, though I have a feeling that that probably wasn't the angle that Edgar Wright is coming from. I have no idea what his ideology is, but he's from Hollywood, even though he's a Brit, whatever. So I'm tending to think he probably leans on the left of everything. I don't know, but still there is definitely truth in this commentary about what the media does to manipulate public perception. And there are multiple instances in here where things have been fabricated in order to make people believe a certain narrative. That sort of stuff kind of goes on here, but fabricated in the sense that things are edited in such a way to present a completely false narrative. I saw one of my fellow movie critics kind of coming away from the film with the perception that the government is lying to the media, and so the media is just passing along that. That's not really how it comes across in this movie. It comes across that the media and the government are pretty much hand in hand, and that the media, controlled by this huge corporation that's pretty much like just one entity, controls the narrative, not necessarily because they're just kind of going along innocently according to what the government is telling them, but because they are working together. If you paid attention to anything about media and government, you know that the mainstream sort of media here, as far as the news media, they lean heavily left. So if there are politicians that are left, they're going to present them in a particular light that is much more positive than a politician on the other side. I got the sense from this movie that basically this media conglomeration, corporation, whatever company, and the government just see completely eye to eye, and that's what's going on here. And it does kind of give you the sense that it's the media that mostly controls what's going on, not necessarily the government. As far as the characters and how they were acted, Glen Powell, it's kind of hard to put it into words how I feel about the way he played this part. I thought that physically, the way he looks physically, because he is very well built, I thought that was convincing as far as the role that he played. They also showed when he was in tryouts for participating in a game, a competition, they were showing the stuff he was doing in the tryouts, and intermixed with those videos, it was showing what he did during his job, the different jobs that he had, and it showed you very clearly why he was capable of doing some of the stuff he did so very well because of his job experience. But as far as his performance, I don't think I was super impressed with his acting in here. It's kind of hard for me to put my finger on it, but I guess the closest that I can come is to say that it felt at times he was overacting in here. There's a scene where he's just really bitchy and has this really snarky ass attitude, and his face is all growly and grumpy, and he's just super sarcastic and just like, and he felt like he was just really trying very hard to be convincing as this super angry guy, and I wasn't falling for it. I was just like, you're acting. I can tell you're acting. You're trying too hard to convince me, and it's not working. So I don't know. And he has, he's poor guy. He can't help it. He's got this smirk that he has on his face when he just grins. It looks so smarmy. You know the grin I'm talking about. You saw it a lot in Top Gun Maverick. And I think coupled with the fact that his eyes are very close together and it gives his face a very unusual look. I'm not necessarily saying anything about him looking bad because that's not the case, but he has unusual features. They're put together in his face in such a way that certain facial expressions that he makes can be super distracting. At least for me. I don't know. I would just stop doing that little grin. You look like you're smirking, and that's annoying. You remind me too much of your character in Top Gun Maverick. It might just be me. Whatever. It just felt like he was trying a little too hard. I'm not super convinced that he's the best at being leading man material. As I already mentioned, the movie is extremely faithful overall to the book. Some very minor changes regarding his wife, well, not counting what are probably clear race swaps. I do not remember what the races were of the characters in the book, but they were probably mostly white. And they did some major swaps. Colman Domingo's one, his wife is another. But like I said, I don't recall, but this was a book written in the 80s. So, demographics were represented differently back then. They're kind of overrepresented in some ways nowadays, but basically in this world, race was not anything that's a factor in anything. It was all rich and poor. That's really what the message was in here. But regarding his wife, there's something in the book that she resorts to because of how desperate they are for money that it's hinted at in here that might be a direction that she's going in, but it's not something that really happens. Also, there is something that happens to his wife and child in the book that is semi-represented here, but not completely. And then finally, the ending. One thing I always remembered about the Running Man book was the ending because of the way it's described, like the injuries that he has at that time. And I never forgot that. And they are very closely showing this sort of stuff that's happening. And that's why I thought, wow, are they really going to go there? But the ending has a little bit of a different twist to it than the book. I can't say I'm completely upset about the ending, but I'm a little torn because I feel that the ending that they chose for the movie kind of weakens the overall effect of the ending from the book, but they needed this ending, I guess, the way they did it, in order to carry through further with the messaging that was being built up, or the theme that was being built up, the storyline that was being built up as he was competing in this competition about rebellion and overthrowing the system and all of that stuff. So I don't know. Jury's kind of out on the whole ending thing for me. The only other thing I could point to as far as a con in this for me is that it feels a bit on the long side. It's more than 2 hours. Obviously, credits are going to take up 10-ish or 10 plus minutes of the end credits. Some stuff was feeling a little bit repetitive. That's probably largely because in this competition, they have 30 days. That's book accurate as well. So certain scenarios, situations that were happening just felt like a little bit of a rehash of what we'd already seen. Maybe some of that could have been trimmed out, or as the drinker mentioned in his review, which I disagree with his overall take on this movie, but he had a complaint that I kind of agree with about how long the competition was portrayed in the movie. Yes, it's book accurate, but in the movie, giving us 30 days worth, it's a bit long. Maybe if you want to really time compress it, cut the competition in half or even more, shave off some of the repetitive stuff, and that would give us something that's a bit leaner, might move a little bit faster. I wasn't necessarily bored, but I did recognize that it was taking us a bit to get to the end. At the same time, the end felt a little bit rushed the way it happened. The final act, or leading up to and including the final act. But that's really the only major issue I think I have with this film. I think if you're going into this expecting it to be a remake of the 1987 movie or expecting it to feel the same, you're going to be disappointed because it doesn't have the same tone. It doesn't have the same look. The 87 movie was very 80s. The hunters were very distinct. The hunters are not like that in this movie. I like the hunters in this movie better than the ones that they showed in it was so cartoonish to me. That's one of the reasons why the Running Man movie with Arnold in it just doesn't work so well for me, is because it just felt very cartoony and just silly. I don't know, I've never really loved that film. I mean, I'll watch it because it's got Arnold in it, but it's not my favorite. Okay, I think that's all I have to say for now about The Running Man. If you guys watch it, I'm very curious to see what you think about it. It's getting mixed reviews just like the 87 movie did, but I'm curious to know from those who have read the book if you like this version more because it's so much more book accurate. Okay, that's it for this one, you guys. Bye.